This and every episode of REKT Podcast is brought to you by Beaksy Exchange, an upcoming cryptocurrency exchange built in collaboration with One Market Data. Beaksy is bringing legacy finance speed, power, and sophistication to crypto for the first time. With 225,000 transactions per second per pair, comparable to NASDAQ, 15 order types on day one, with 25 order types on full rollout, and a dedicated customer support team, Beaksy is setting itself apart from the competition. Check out Beaksy today at Beaksy.com and pre-register today at Beaksy.com/registration to get your free Beaksy Exchange tokens. That's Beaksy.com, BEAXY.com.
Hi, this is Brock Pierce, and we're on REKT.
Before we get to Brock Pierce, let me take a moment and tell you about our friends at Honeyminer. They were the very first sponsor on our show, and they're back with a huge announcement. They are now supporting Linux with their Honeyminer Max. Honeyminer Max is compatible with Ubuntu 16.04, 18.04, and CentOS 7. Honeyminer Max is paying out market value plus 10%, making it the most profitable Linux miner on the market. Have you ever wanted to get into crypto mining but have no idea how? Honeyminer is the answer. They have the easiest way with their one-click install mining software where you can earn Bitcoin straight to your computer. Sound cool? Check it out at honeyminer.com/labs. That's honeyminer.com/labs, and follow them on Twitter at GetHoneyMiner. Hello and welcome to REKT Podcast. I am Bunchu alongside my wonderful, esteemed, and credible co-hosts, Crypto Chamber and Cynthia Wood. Chamber, how you doing, buddy?
I don't know. I think a couple of those adjectives may have been wrong, but I'm doing pretty good nonetheless.
Cynthia, how are you?
I'm great. It's a warm 75 here in Florida.
Stop it.
It's beautiful.
Hey,
it's
been pretty great the last 2 days here. It was like 60 today. I was driving with the windows down. I am recording from a hotel room in lovely and the metropolis, as you put it, of Binghamton, New York, where I have crappy internet service, and I'm looking at what they call a river view out of my hotel room. It's a pond with melting ice. So that's what I'm doing today. But we are going to get right to it. We have a fantastic guest. We've been looking forward to this interview for a long time. We have the one and only Brock Pierce with us today. Brock is an entrepreneur and venture capitalist with an extensive track record of founding, advising, and investing in disruptive businesses. He's been credited with pioneering the market for digital currency, has raised more than $5 billion with a B for companies he's founded. Brock is the chairman of the Bitcoin Foundation and co-founder of the EOS Alliance, Block.one, Blockchain Capital, Tether, and Mastercoin, which was the first ever ICO. Brock, pleasure to have you, man. How are you doing?
I am grateful and glad to be here. I'm surprised we're not doing this interview together in Puerto Rico.
We are looking.
I'd much rather be in Puerto Rico.
We are looking forward to talking about Puerto Rico, even though we cannot be there ourselves. We'll have to take you up on a rain check on that one, though.
Well, then we've already scheduled the next round of this, so the next one will be in person in Puerto Rico together.
Now, Brock, I know this cannot be one of your. It can't be. Of all the great accomplishments here that I just read off, one of the things people remember you for most was young Gordon Bombay. Does that still stick with you to this day? And what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, my childhood was, spent in the entertainment business from the ages of 1 to 16. My first memory in life takes place on a set, at the age of 3, making a commercial for KCRW called "Don't Let Your Babies Grow Up to Be Cowboys." The film stuff clearly is No matter what I do in life, I'll never live that one down, because the allure of celebrity and the allure of media and film, always kind of trumps everything in the minds of most. I'm proud of it. I mean, it's awesome. I got to play young Gordon Bombay. I got to be the first Duck, in the Mighty Ducks. The flying V's, quack quack quack.
That's awesome.
It was great. What an unusual and interesting childhood. So grateful for the opportunity and education, unconventional education it provided.
But I mean, realistically here, obviously you had mentioned the allure of Hollywood and all that fun stuff. But at the end of the day, just looking at your resume, we got to get to a point soon where that's a secondary thought, and you are one of the godfathers of cryptocurrency. I mean, you're looking at Bitcoin Foundation, EOS Alliance, Block.one, Tether, Mastercoin. I think it was the first ICO, correct?
Yeah, Mastercoin was. We didn't call it an ICO at the time,
right?
But it was the first time that a project, opened up its doors to taking in resources from the crowd, right. And in exchange for your contribution, gave you coins in a new project, which eventually, we became called an ICO, and so it was a cool thing to be part of. At the time, think of Bitcoin as TCP/IP. Mastercoin was the HTTP layer so that you could build other applications on top of Bitcoin. So not only was it the first ICO, but it was kind of the first major project that started to demonstrate that there's more than just a financial use case. We're not only just building digital gold here. The blockchain as a platform is capable of doing so much more. And so it was a very important project at its time, and incredibly fortunate that I had the pleasure of being involved.
That's great. Bunch, are you still there?
That crummy internet.
Right?
We may have lost him.
In 2009, by the way, in New York in 2019.
Right.
Unbelievable.
The fact that
internet connection issues.
Still having connection issues. I mean, I understand if he was in Africa, but...
No. I've been to South Africa. I had great internet.
Exactly.
So what we'll do is, I guess we'll kind of leave off, and maybe he can jump back on in a little bit. But yeah, we just kind of wanted to talk to you just in regards to some of the projects that you're currently working on. Obviously, with when I first heard about you in cryptocurrency was through EOS or EOS. Being a person from the company, how do we pronounce this properly? Because I know I've been making a mumble of it for a long time.
EOS, correct? EOS?
I think however you like.
Yeah, okay, good. I appreciate that.
You can call it EOS, you can call it EOS, you can call it, whatever resonates with you. I mean, it's one of those things you don't want to tell people, what's right for them. It's ultimately a subjective decision, as we're building open source systems with open minds and open hearts, it's whatever it means to you. Yeah. You could, the only term that's ever been used to describe it that I disagree with, the only one that I'm not fond of, the only one that I don't agree it means is Ethereum on steroids. Which is, what some people have called it. I think anything else I'm good with. Because I'm a huge supporter of Ethereum, and I believe that Ethereum is very important to our ecosystem. In the same way when Bitcoin goes up, rising tides raise all coins. All coins kind of go up. When Bitcoin goes down, all coins go down. Ethereum is next in line. What's good for Ethereum is good for all of us. What's bad for Ethereum is bad for all of us.
Right.
So I am always ever rooting for their success and continued success.
Well, that's good to know. Because I have a big bag of Ethereum and I need it to do okay.
I'm huge Ethereum supporter. I was a major participant in the original crowd sale. Friends with most of the founders before Ethereum. Worked closely with everyone on that team through the original crowd sale and leading up to it, and very, very proud of all that they've accomplished.
Good stuff. Okay, I think through the miracle of modern technology, we have Bunchy back on.
Yes, I am. So
Hallelujah.
I didn't catch I didn't catch all of that, but I did want to ask a follow-up about that. So, we were talking a little bit about the Mastercoin and everything now, and it being kind of the first, form of ICO. What are your thoughts on the overall ICO market? We kind of saw it hit this huge high, followed by this, really an area now where people are kind of staying averse from ICOs. Where do you see the market going in the future with that?
So I'm a huge believer in crowdfunding, and that's what an ICO really is. I mean, historically, capital formation has been something controlled by a very small number of people, primarily venture capitalists, primarily in Silicon Valley more so than anywhere else in the world historically. Obviously, China and other markets have emerged. But capital formation historically only happens in very specific cities. Meaning if you want to be an entrepreneur, if you want to be an innovator, if you want to be a game changer with a vision, you kind of have to be in one of those cities because that's where the capital is. If you as an entrepreneur, if you're born in Eastern Europe or Africa or Latin America or Southeast Asia, the odds of your dream or your vision, your project becoming a reality is quite low historically, insanely low. The advantages of being in San Francisco or New York, if you wanted to do something entrepreneurial, you had a huge advantage over everyone else. And so what the ICO sort of market has done, or what crowdfunding in general is doing, is it's chipping away at that, the old guard and their control over what projects, get capitalized and who gets to innovate. You need to belong to the right club. You need to graduate from the right school and be in the right sorority or fraternity to basically be an innovator. And that leaves a lot of potential on the table that never gets realized. Now the next Mark Zuckerberg, the next Vitalik Buterin, the next Dan Larimer could, in theory, be from anywhere. And I think that that's a great thing for society. So the ICO clearly had very small beginnings around Mastercoin and projects through 2014 and 15. ICOs were not a preferred choice of financing. The people that were doing ICOs in the early days were people that were trying to experiment or tinker at creating new models for capital formation. But in general, everyone, if given a choice, took venture capital because venture capital was a better source of funding. The signaling or validation that it provided, for one, but number two, it provided more capital. The early ICOs, didn't provide a lot of capital. Ethereum was the first major project that chose to do an ICO, even though they had every VC in the world that mattered courting them.
Right.
And they said, no, thank you. We don't want your model. We don't like your way of, operating. We're going to go with this crowd thing because we think it's true to our philosophical views of how the world needs to be and how the world needs to change. And that was really the thing that set the example for the future that we've started to experience. But it wasn't until the DAO that ICOs became popular. The DAO took in $150 million, on a white paper for disrupting venture capital, essentially. And obviously, it also showed us a lot of what not to do, like do your security audits, do your security audits, do your security audits. Don't rush these things, dot your I's, cross your T's, throw on a belt and suspenders. So they obviously made there's a lot of lessons learned there of what not to do. But the positive thing that came out of the DAO is it showed people that this model can scale, that there is something to ICOs. And entrepreneurs all over the world woke up when they saw that and said, whoa, this is a better model than venture capital. And it caused incredible entrepreneurs all over the world to start to think about something other than VC. It made everyone say, maybe VC isn't the best model. And this is a little odd as someone that, in my case, I've been a VC for years. Right. But I believe, in life, the best innovators, the best disruptors are the ones that are willing to disrupt themselves.
Right.
The people that are not just looking at other people's, markets and saying, how do I disrupt that? But people that are willing to say, with all the knowledge and experience I have regarding my own domain, how can I improve on my own industry? I mean, venture capital is an industry that has historically been funding innovation and funding disruption. But how much has venture capital as an industry changed itself? For the people that finance innovation, they haven't done a whole lot of innovating. Right. Tim Draper clearly has innovated. He figured out how to franchise, the model by creating all these DFJ funds around the world. And that was a big innovation. He was one of the only VCs in the world that actually truly innovated around his business. And then you had things like AngelList and Naval Ravikant and the various types that have said, hey, angels, let's give that angels greater access, to entrepreneurs and allow angels to play the roles that they are. We call them angels for a reason. You kind of have to be crazy to fund a raw startup. And it's not a very good business, which is why we call them angels. They're people that are normally entrepreneurs that have been successful in their entrepreneurial endeavors, made some money, and are choosing to give back, right? It's that pay it forward model. I've been lucky, and I'm going to take some of my success and I'm going to give it back to the next wave of entrepreneurs, the people that are in the same position that I was once in, and due to abundance and success and good fortune, continue to be an angel for that next wave. VCs, on the other hand, are very different than angels.
Right.
They're sophisticated investors that are very focused on a profit motive. The reality is most angels were not that. Angels were angels. They were the ones that you prayed, support.
Maybe one day I could be an angel.
Yeah. Well, but that's, as an entrepreneur, that is when you've been, one of the lucky, one of the blessed, to give back.
Yeah, absolutely.
That is an entrepreneur, one of the kind of unspoken laws, unspoken rules is, to go out there and be a mentor. And if you've been successful enough to the point that you've been blessed with abundance, to pay it forward and, to continue to support that next, cadre of entrepreneurs. And fortunately, our, tech and innovators, have been blessed, these last 20 years in a way where we've been given abundance and, let's keep that rolling.
Absolutely.
Let's keep innovating. Let's change the world. Let's make it a better place. So, yeah, the ICOs then after the DAO, people woke up and said, wow, this is incredible. And like all good things, it has to come to an end, at least temporarily. The bubble emerged. Everything was raising money. FOMO set in. People were throwing money around loosely, not even doing any real diligence. Projects started to be funded that shouldn't be funded or overfunded, on a white paper. Right. I mean, we got to get back to reality at some point. Teams that have never really done anything before, never shipped a product. Just because you can make a good white paper and a little bit about tech, there's more to building successful tech things than just engineering. And a lot of the engineers think it's only that. When you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail. But ultimately, great projects happen because of the combination of skills. You need all the talents around the table. Obviously, engineers being the most important of which, but you also need the storytellers, you also need the marketers, you also need the UX, sort of people that understand how to create a user experience that's palatable to the masses.
That's one of the biggest lacking things, I think, in the space right now is
because we've been over-dominated by engineering.
Absolutely.
And again, they are the foundation of what makes everything work here, so I'm not taking away from that in any way whatsoever, but we need all the things.
Yes, we do. We do.
And so things got out of hand, and then on top of that, the wrong people started coming in.
Right.
When you get this asymmetry of information, where there's very few people that actually understand this stuff, but lots of money being made, that's when all the cockroaches come out. All the scam artists, all the Ponzi scheme people, the pyramid builders, and everything else. Yeah. And of course, lots of bad actors started showing up, started taking advantage of the hype. And lots of people started to be burned. And of course, the market had to go through a correction. I'm really happy that we've been through this correction. It's been a cleansing process. It's been a purging, of the wrong people and all the right people, the real believers, the people that are doing the real work, that are actually building the things. We're still around.
Yep.
And there's still capital available for the people that are doing things, not in abundance like it was. And you have to work a lot harder to get it. But, the market's not closed. The bar has just been raised, and for good reason, because a lot of people have been burned. And the market is moving, towards STOs. I had the pleasure of being a big fan of crowdfunding outside of ICOs, and Mastercoin, helped lead to this. I became an early user of AngelList. I was running one of the top 10 syndicates back when syndicates first opened up on the platform. I got involved with some of the early Jobs Act companies when they started doing Reg A's, Reg A+,
right.
Reg S, Reg D. As that legislation was passing, I said, this is going to be a big deal for crypto. And so I went and became an early advisor to Distilled Jeans. I think they were the second Reg A offering ever. So I was already in the background while doing all this crypto stuff, spending time trying to figure out where these worlds are going to converge.
Right, no kidding.
Right.
Which eventually then I started telling people, as the ICO market's booming, I'm like, you should consider doing a security token because there was a lot of legal ambiguity. And I'm like, no, we can do security tokens. And people are like, what's that? I go, well, you do it, compliantly from a regulation perspective. You sell digital equity or you sell digital royalties, dividends, all sorts of stuff. And they're like, that, how does that work? And I was encouraging people for over a year to do it. And no one, kind of got it, or no one wanted to do it because the current model looked good enough. And,
right.
Money was flowing. And so people were like, rather than reinvent the wheel and innovating, let me just keep, rinse and repeating. And so that eventually led to, with Blockchain Capital, we did our third fund, which was the first ever STO. We did the first security token offering. And that was in the spring of 2017, using a Reg D offering in the US, a Reg S offering internationally. And so I had the pleasure with my partners at Blockchain Capital to do the first ever security token offering, recognizing that the market needed, some more checks and balances. Yeah. The problem with utility tokens, I love utility tokens, but you can't have users, contributors don't have rights. And when you have a lot of bad actors showing up, contributors do need rights.
They sure do.
In a perfect world, utility tokens are it. Right. But we don't live in a perfect world.
No, we sure don't.
And we live in a world of asymmetry of information. And so I think security tokens are the near-term future. I think that utility tokens will have a resurgence in some number of years once the market matures and once we, the participants, actually know what we're doing.
So you think this is going to be, STOs are going to be kind of the main way of accumulating funds, and then possibly ICOs may make a comeback afterwards?
Yeah, I think that's probably how it goes. ICOs might be 2, 5, 10 years away.
Right.
In the near term, I think security tokens are going to be kind of the future, in the same way that you normally would go out and raise money from VCs.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of raising it from VCs, you go out and raise it from the public, but compliantly in the form of a security token, where those contributors know they have ownership, where those contributors know they have rights to royalties or dividends or something of that nature. In the same way we've sold equity historically, but instead of selling it to a small number of the elite, now it's going to be open to the many.
So where do you see the the cryptocurrency space as far as the next kind of breakthrough into the mainstream? Now, a lot of people talking. We had, I think, Tron and Verge got into the the adult industry, which has always been ahead of the game when it came to Blu-ray and stuff like that. As far as technology goes. Another one is obviously gaming. Do you see those two being kind of the front runners for the next wave of mass adoption?
Yeah, I've been saying it since 2013 because you just have to pull a page out of the history books.
Right.
Historically, the adult industry and the gaming industry have been on the bleeding edge of technology innovation, and the reason why is because they're the industries that have not been accepted, by the banks and the mainstream industries. And so as a result of that, they've had the need to innovate the most. Where the need is the greatest is where the innovation is the most likely to happen. And so those sectors historically have always been on the front lines of innovation. And that's been that way for a very long time, and clearly it was going to be no different here.
Would you think
not how we want to be known as an industry, but it just is what it is. History repeats itself.
And would you include gambling into that as well?
Yeah, gaming, both in terms of video games and gambling,
right.
both types of gaming.
Yes, all the fun games.
Yeah, well, those gambling and gaming are kind of the same industry.
Right.
They're different markets, but they're similar businesses.
Well, I know there was a couple of weeks ago, I think Fortnite had that moment where they were accepting Monero for, I think, half an hour, and then they weren't anymore. And everybody thought, I think for a brief moment, like that was it. Like this is going to be crazy. But I think we need something. I don't know if it'll be necessarily Fortnite, but something of that ilk to really set it off. I think you're 100% correct there.
Yeah, so I think it's going to be either those old industries of adult and gambling, or I think it's going to be one of three, verticals that are going to drive mass adoption, mass consumer adoption. Well, four. The other one is financial inclusion.
Okay.
2/3 of the population of the planet, 2/3 of the population do not have access to banking or financial services, or they have limited access. And so one of the things that our industry is doing is it's democratizing the global financial system in a way where every person on the planet is going to have equal access. and the least fortunate billions of people stand to benefit the most. Places like Latin America, Africa, Southeast Asia. And that's one of the great use cases for this technology. We have the power to bring people out of poverty, to give them the tools that we often take for granted. But the three other spaces that I think are going to drive it are either going to be social networking. Mm-hmm. Not everybody's most people are not happy with Facebook. Yeah. They're just kind of trapped within that walled garden.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And they feel their data is being abused and all sorts of other things. And as their data is being sold, they don't benefit from it in any way.
Right.
And because of that critical mass of users, that marketplace network effect, I think that there's an opportunity around social where blockchain could disrupt the social sector, giving users control or ownership over their data and the permissioning of who and what gets access to that data, and then having some financial participation
Absolutely.
in the monetization of that data.
I know Steam was really big for that. Going back a year, I don't know where they are now, but I know InvestFeed is a social networking platform that kind of participates that way, and I think BitTube is kind of like the blockchain equivalent of YouTube, where people can go out and put content on there and get some sort of reimbursement for their time.
Yeah, so I think we're going to find a killer app in the social sphere that takes off in a big way.
Yeah.
Because the market, it just feels like the stars have aligned and the market is ready. The next big one, I think, is messaging. Mm-hmm. Skype, WhatsApp, Telegram obviously has raised a lot of money. They're in the game. So I think that messaging has a ton of potential as well. I mean, just look at what people use the internet for today: social, messaging. And then the third part, like Fortnite, is games, but not the gambling kind. I mean the video game kind. I think that gaming, messaging, and social are, the areas to be watching most closely in terms of where the big, call it blockchain consumer.
So Brock, just to get, we'll get back to Brock Pierce in just a moment, but we have to take this time to talk to you about our sponsor, BApp. BApp is the first complete mobile mortgage app that allows you to get a home loan on your smartphone, not some dud rocket. BApp lets you get a mortgage anytime, anywhere, including at 6 a.m. Dawn Patrol. Apply, shop loans, lock rates, and close all from your smartphone. Coming soon to iTunes and Google Play Store. That's BApp. Give a little background. You kind of innovated that whole digital currency in that gaming space. Can you talk about that? That's kind of before you got into cryptocurrency and Bitcoin per se, but that's kind of where your background started, right?
Yeah, so I was in addition to being an actor, I was a magician, and in addition to being
how did I not know this?
It's if you hang out with me at night, I do tricks.
Oh my goodness!
A friend of mine, Warren, he's down there in Puerto Rico as well. Warren Bailey.
Yes,
he was telling me. Yes, yeah. He's always talking. He lovingly refers to you as the wizard, and that it tells me about your magic tricks. So man. I did know that. Sorry,
I
guys.
love a good magic trick.
And so, I started doing magic at the age of 5.
Really?
And I was doing stage shows in Vegas when I was like 13.
No kidding. That's fantastic. I was just in Vegas. We had a magician at one of the gatherings we were at, and he was atrocious.
I like it, Magic the Gathering, like Mount Gox.
Yeah, exactly.
Magic the Gathering online exchange.
Didn't even try that.
your use of words there were perfect.
Yeah, I think I've been spending too much time in the crypto
Magic
space.
the Gathering. But I was also a professional gamer.
Okay.
So, like as a kid, my whenever I booked a commercial and I was making a Nintendo commercial, or I was an underwear model, but not the Calvin Klein type, the Target through the loom type. But and so I also was a pro gamer, and every time I booked a gig, I got to pick a game, and I beat every game I played normally within the first day.
Really?
And I would hang out. I was a mall rat. I'd hang out in the arcades and hustle people for money at Mortal Kombat and things of that nature.
That's awesome.
Before esports kind of took off in a big way, and so I was a very avid gamer, in all of my youth. And so when the first persistent games were coming out, like think World of Warcraft, think Second Life, EverQuest, Lineage, however you want to look at them, Ultima Online. when the first persistent worlds were emerging, where the items were alienable and they could be transferred and the game world was persistent, meaning you came back and the things were still there, a market emerged for those in-game virtual goods or those in-game virtual currencies. People were willing to buy and sell them. And at the time, people thought it was crazy. I told people I'm selling virtual currencies in games, and they're like, what are you talking about? They're like, why would anyone want to buy virtual currency in a video game? I'm like, well, do you play golf? And they're like, yeah. I go, do you like to use a good golf club or a bad golf club? And they're like, I like good clubs. I go, well, that's how you choose to spend your discretionary time. If you chose to spend your free time in World of Warcraft, do you think you want a good sword or a bad sword? And they're like, I suppose I'd want a good sword. And I'm like, exactly. Just because something is intangible doesn't make it any less valuable. Right. It's how you choose to spend your discretionary time. And if you're fortunate enough to have discretionary income, you're probably going to use some of it to improve your leisure time. And so you're going to spend money to improve the utility of your game or to improve your social status. And so the digital world mimics the analog world. And so markets starting to emerge, and I started building some of the early businesses in the world to build exchanges, to buy and sell virtual currencies and games. So I started playing in that space in 1999. And then in 2001, it became my full-time effort. And I started the biggest company in the world that was making a market for virtual currencies and games. And so I built up a supply chain of 400,000 people, primarily in China, playing games like World of Warcraft to mine digital currency that I was then selling all over the world. I was PayPal's largest customer for over 3 years, helped pioneer their credit card payment processing business. I was Google's largest advertiser for a moment. We helped launch Alipay in China. And so I got very good at international payment systems, cross-border payments, dealing with foreign nations, virtual currencies, all of these skills that were very relevant to everything we do now today. And so I had a nice 10 or 15 year head start.
No kidding. I was going to say 99. You're a pretty young guy still. How old are you?
I'm 38.
I was going to say,
he's
we're about
acting,
the same age.
He's acting.
So I quit acting
he's doing Broadway shows all by the age, or Vegas shows by the age of 5. I'm still wet in the bed. Who knows? Like he's had a lifetime of success.
I was gonna say 1999. I think I just smoked my first joint.
He's had a lifetime of success before we could breathe. So.
Yeah, no, I agree. Like you've done a lot more before I smoked my first joint. I'll tell you.
Well, I got very lucky in the transition from acting to business. As an actor, I eventually because I was born into acting. I didn't decide to be an actor. It just that was what I did. I woke up every day, and that was I was a professional before I even knew what I was doing. And so by the time I was about 14, 15, I decided that acting wasn't my calling, at least not reading other people's scripts.
No kidding.
And performing other people's lines. And so in that world that I grew up in, I really was an entrepreneurial kid. I had built every lemonade stand business I could conjure at the time. And I really wanted to be the producer. I wanted to be the person that put the project together or financed it, because that, in the world I grew up in, was the role that most kind of appealed to me. And so I started dabbling in independent film production when I was 15, 16, 17. And then the internet, 1.0, the internet started taking off. Consumer internet started to become popular. Because of gaming, I was, an avid computer user and, whatnot. And so I had the good fortune of starting my first company when I was 16, 17. And we were the first ones trying to put video on the internet. We were basically Hulu, Netflix, YouTube in 1997. And so we raised $88 million. We created the word webisode. We created the format of how all media is basically consumed on the internet today.
You created the word webisode?
Yeah, we did.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
That's really
and so I had my first sort of foray into internet tech entrepreneurialism. I was 17 in 97, 98, 99. And so I lived through the first Internet 1.0 bubble. And had a front row seat to it all. And it didn't end well. I mean, we raised $88 million and we spent 96. And when the bubble burst in the spring of 2000, we went out of business like the other 99% of startups.
Wow, that's impressive. So just switching gears a little bit here, we chatted a little bit at the top of the show just in regards to Puerto Rico. Just wanted to get an idea of how, how you got to Puerto Rico from, I'm assuming, L.A. at a certain point, just from your youth. But how'd you get out to Puerto Rico?
Yeah, so I've been living all over the world. I've lived in Hong Kong, Shanghai, Beijing, Seoul, London, Paris, Spain. I've lived all over the planet. And for a long time, I've been a digital nomad, just flying around the world like a bee, really aggressively in the case of 2013, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18 for crypto, because I needed to help, pollinate, these ideas. Right. I had relationships all over the world. In South Korea, I had over 90% market share for all virtual currency trading.
Really?
I ran the entire South Korean market. So I went, I had to go spend, that's in my old video game activities. Mm-hmm. So I went over to my old partners and said, let's get into Bitcoin. And they're all like, no. I'm like, come on, guys, you need to get into Bitcoin. This is going to be a big deal. They're like, no, video games is where it's at. I'm like, come on. And so we started exchanges like BitThumb and, kicked off the whole Korean market because, Korea and China were my main markets. And so helped get Bitcoin going over there, helped Bitcoin get going over in South Korea. And so I've been flying around the world like a bee, pollinating these ideas everywhere I go. And so in 2014, in Puerto Rico, I started going as a teenager. But in 2014, there was one big concern I had, and that was banking. Mm-hmm. So in 2013, if you had a crypto exchange, if you were trying to build another Coinbase, banks wouldn't bank you. Coinbase was the only one that had a real banking relationship, and that was with Silicon Valley Bank, and then Zappo had a similar relationship. But Silicon Valley Bank only banked a couple of companies, and everyone else couldn't get banking. And so the founders would go in and create bank accounts and not disclose to the bank what they were doing. And when you don't disclose to a bank the nature of your business, it's a felony. And so I became very worried about all the entrepreneurs.
Right.
This, in my mind, became a systemic risk to the ecosystem. And so I said, well, how do we solve this problem? I go, well, I've built lots of companies. I know how to do lots of things. Let me go build a bank or buy a bank. And so I started looking at buying state-chartered banks, federally chartered banks, how do credit unions and co-ops work. And I started doing a deep dive into banking through 2013 into 2014, and I was pulling my hair out. I was so frustrated. This was going to take years and be really, really difficult and extremely expensive. Getting into the banking cartel club is a difficult one. And so I'm eventually like, I'm a hacker. There's got to be a back door. I'm like, wait, what about the U.S. Virgin Islands, Guam, Samoa, Puerto Rico? And like that day, a friend of mine comes up to me and says, hey, Brock, are you familiar with these tax rules in Puerto Rico? I'm like, no. He goes, you should take a look at this. This is, this could be really interesting. I'm like, yeah, get that over to me immediately. So I look through this stuff and he goes, yeah, the guy that runs all that stuff down in Puerto Rico wants to talk to you. I'm like, yes, please. I get on a phone call with him the next day and he's talking to me about the taxes. I said, I'm not interested in the taxes. I go, money isn't my motivation. I care about, making the world a better place. And the opportunity cost of being in Puerto Rico is too high. But I really wanted to talk to you about banking in Puerto Rico. Does Puerto Rico have any back doors to banking in the U.S.? And he goes, as a matter of fact, it does. Really? The same laws that made these new tax rules in 2012, the 20 and 22 acts, and the same legislation, there's a thing called Act 273. I'm like, what's Act 273? He goes, it's the ability to create an IFE. It's an international financial entity. It's like a bank. It gives you all the capabilities of a bank, but it's not a bank. And it allows for offshore banking in the U.S. that's still offshore, but also onshore banking in the U.S., except for you can't bank Puerto Ricans. And he's like, I'm like, that's amazing. I go, how many people are doing it? He goes, no one's done it yet.
What?
I jumped on a plane, flew down there immediately, and I go, let's start a Puerto Rican bank. And so we started the first crypto bank. It was called Noble Markets or Noble Bank, and we became the biggest crypto bank in the world. And that's what really got me tied into Puerto Rico over 2014, 15, and 16. And so then once I became familiar with everything in Puerto Rico, it was just kind of in my register of knowledge. It was in my knowledge bank. And so I also noticed wherever I go around the world, lots of really incredible people will show up. People with tremendous amounts of intellectual capital, human capital, financial capital, spiritual capital. If I go spend time in London, people fly in from all over Europe. If I go spend time in Hong Kong, people seem to fly in from all over Asia. When I go to New York, people have it. They'll come where I go for whatever reason because they all have questions. They want help. They want advice. They want investment. They want whatever. And so I'm going, well, if I'm a bit of a vortex of sorts, if where I go, people will follow. Once I came to this realization, that becomes a responsibility. I'm like, if wherever I go, people will go, I need to make use of that. Mm-hmm. San Francisco doesn't need a bunch of help right now. New York doesn't need a bunch of help right now. London doesn't need a bunch of help right now. Hong Kong doesn't need a bunch of help right now. If I go anywhere and people will show up, I have an obligation to go somewhere that could use some help.
Absolutely.
And so Puerto Rico, because of what I was doing in 2014, was first on my radar. And because of the tax benefits, I'm like, that'll be easy to convince people.
Right.
It's not just, it's hard to get people to move anywhere, right?
Yeah.
There has to be a compelling story. Puerto Rico is paradise. The weather is great. And by the way, there's no taxes. And guess what? You're going to be helping people in a big way.
Right.
Come down, check it out. Come down and check it out. And so there was that side of it, but also I'm a history buff. I'm a voracious reader of history. I believe that, it's important that we study history and the mistakes of the past so as not to repeat them again. And so the story of Puerto Rico is a very interesting one, and it's largely an untold story. It's been written out of the history books. When Christopher Columbus sailed across the Atlantic in 1492, he didn't first stop in Puerto Rico, but he set up shop in Puerto Rico. In early 1493, that was the headquarters of the New World. All of Europe's influence on all of North and South America, as well as the Caribbean, it all started in Puerto Rico. It is 9/11. It is the Twin Towers. It is ground zero of all of Europe's influence on the Americas and the indigenous people. All of it started there. And so when you start thinking about, history and where the healing needs to begin, and, the people that deserve it the most having been conquered by the conquistadors and all this sort of stuff, it's like, it's interesting because Puerto Rico was the first state, but not the 51st state, but the forgotten state.
Right.
And I started telling friends of mine, okay, we're going to move down to Puerto Rico in December 2018. And so I'd already kind of put together a plan, was telling everyone, and then Hurricane Maria happened. Mm-hmm. And when Hurricane Maria happened, and I'm seeing, what's happening in Puerto Rico, it wasn't convenient. It wasn't the time that I had planned.
No.
But I said, now's the time. This is, if the goal is to go help and make a difference, now's the time to go do that. And so the idea is to, encourage people to come with intellectual capital, human capital, financial capital, spiritual capital, show up with good intentions, and, try and make an impact. The real problem that Puerto Rico suffers from isn't the hurricane. It's the consistent brain drain.
Right.
The people with the intellectual capital, the human capital, the financial capital, all those things, the people with the means keep leaving because of a lack of opportunity. Right. And then the youth today, because of a lack of opportunity, keep leaving. When you're always losing your best and your brightest and those with the means, and that's going on consistently, that is where things are really a problem. There had been no Puerto Rican startups, none. There were no angel investors. There were no startups, but there's incredibly talented people. Puerto Rico has more bachelor degrees per capita than anywhere in the United States. They're the most educated people in the U.S. There's more artists per capita than anywhere in the United States. There's not a lack of talent in Puerto Rico. There's a lack of tools and a lack of hope because they've been, stepped on for so long. So if you're a Puerto Rican with a dream or a vision of doing something amazing in the world, you have to leave.
Right.
Now, what's amazing that's happened, there's now angels showing up in mass. There's mentors showing up in mass. Accelerators are forming. Incubators are forming. Co-working facilities are forming. Co-living facilities are forming. Hackathons are happening all over the island. They have the number 15 engineering school in the U.S. NASA, Facebook, Google, etc. have near full-time recruiters in Puerto Rico because Puerto Rico's number one export is human beings, really talented human beings. And so there are incredible Puerto Ricans in New York and in Silicon Valley working on startups because they can't do it in Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico just had the first 2 startups that raised over $1 million at the end of last year. And I think there's going to be a few more of them at the beginning of this year. And hopefully many more by the second half of this year, which means something's changing. Mm-hmm. If you're a Puerto Rican that's part of the diaspora, the opportunity to go home, the tools are showing up. The opportunities are there. You don't have to leave anymore.
Right.
That's not to say you have to stay or you have to go back. But, this little movement... This little movement is giving people choice. It's changing the game.
That's fantastic.
And I think I'm moving to Puerto Rico. Right, yeah. I just recently watched that BBC documentary that came out about what you guys are doing down there and just kind of followed you around. I think it was during Restart or around that time. And your intentions are so good and so pure, and you have such an influx of all kinds of different types of talent coming in there, but you were getting a lot of negative pushback from the Puerto Rican community. Has that changed at all since that came out, or how is that going?
Well, I've had almost none of these types of interactions in Puerto Rico. They've only happened 3 times. And coincidentally, it's only when a camera's rolling.
Yeah. Okay.
And so in that video, there were 4 people, 4 women, only one of whom was Puerto Rican. The other 3 are from Chicago and New York. They're not Puerto Rican. I think they were paid actors.
Really?
I see. Interesting.
And which, by the way, I'm grateful for it.
Right.
Because you need, this is media at the end of the day. You need it to be entertaining. It has to have a little sensation. It has to have that was kind of the hook that got people to pay attention and watch. People don't want to watch just people singing Kumbaya, my Lord, right?
Yeah.
People want some entertainment. They want a little conflict. We like Jerry Springer. I mean, in terms of, this is how media, tends to work. So I'm grateful for it. It certainly probably increased the viewership and all sorts of things. And people take from it what they want.
Right.
Remember, when you watch a video like that, some people just see that beautiful intention. Some people only see the horrible, people that are, there to try and, do whatever it is that they think that we're doing. You take from those the things that you see what you want, right? It's through what prism do you see the world? Do you view the world from a place of negativity? Haters going to hate. Do you view the world from a place of positivity? Are you just a neutral bystander? We show up and we take, our brains process and take in what we want.
Absolutely.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Now,
so it's been great. It's been helpful. I mean, it's been wonderful. So I'm grateful for all that content, however it's portrayed.
Right.
Because there's a new person moving to Puerto Rico every day. And without that BBC interview, without that New York Times article, without that stuff, it wouldn't be the case. Thank you to the media for, making it entertaining.
So speaking of entertainment, one of our most entertaining guests we've had on the show was Mr. John McAfee.
And he's a hoot.
So in that interview, he made claim that you threw the best parties.
The very best parties in
now,
crypto.
Can you confirm or deny that claim?
Because I celebrate life every day.
I'm going to be honest, because you're chatting about Puerto Rico, and coupling that with the claims from Mr. McAfee really wants me to get my passport and get me over to the island very quickly.
I mean, he's the king of Burning Man over here. I mean, of course he throws great parties.
Definitely I'm a burner, but I'm an event producer as well. I mean, I like entertaining. I believe in, I believe that people perform their greatest work when they're inspired. And when you're inspired and when you're filled with bliss and joy and happiness, that's when you learn the most. That's when, your inspirations come and all the good things sort of come out of it. So I believe in going through life joyously, happily, full of light.
That's a great plan.
And so, we're restoring an ancient property in Ibiza right now. We've got a 60-acre farm there with Gavin Wood of Ethereum and Jeremy Gardner, a bunch of friends. We're building this. We're restoring one of the most ancient properties in Ibiza. And my brother Vicente Marti is the chairman of El Ro, which is the biggest party on the planet. 150 events around the world. Mm-hmm. We're number 1 in Ibiza, number 1 in Barcelona, number 1 in Europe. We're number 1 in the world in terms of most events at the biggest scale. I'm godfather to his most recent baby. No. He's godfather to my baby to come. So I'm a man that wears many hats.
Wow.
And so if you're, and I also DJ in my free time.
Goodness.
I also spin fire. I also spin fire.
No, you don't. You spin fire too?
Of course he does.
Why not?
I just love learning. I love the more you learn, the more you are, right? Keep an open mind. And
you hear that, people?
When someone says, "Hey, do you want to do this?" I remember Gavin Wood was at my Halloween party at the Houdini Mansion maybe 4 years ago, so I'm spinning fire, and Gavin had never Gavin had never spun fire before. He's like, but he's like, Brock, I just love how you just go try and do everything. He's like, let me do it. And so Gavin, didn't once in his life try playing with a with something not on fire.
Right.
And by the way, the same was true for me. I never used any of the practice sticks. The first time I ever tried fire spinning, it was live and
fire.
I've never spun anything that wasn't on fire.
Wow. All right.
That's awesome.
We're gonna wrap up here. We had mentioned early in the show, we're gonna have your wife on the show next week, and we started a segment called the Newly REKT game, a little spin on the Newlywed game. But before we get into that, I just wanted, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I read that your marriage with Crystal is on a renewable smart contract. Is that correct?
Yeah, so the we did things a little differently. We brought back the ancient Celtic tradition of handfesting, which marriage only lasts a year and a day. It's a year and a day commitment. And so we've had 3 wedding ceremonies. The first one was at Burning Man, an all-unicorn wedding.
Terrific.
The second one was in Ibiza on 7/7/17. The third one was on an airplane at 30,000 feet, flying over China on 8/8/18, where Usher, the singer, was the usher in our wedding.
No way.
No way. That's awesome.
And that was part of the Gumball 3000 as we were rallying from London to Tokyo in a DeLorean with the flux capacitor from the movie inside it, and the license plate is Satoshi.
Wow. Just living your best life, aren't you?
Every day.
Absolutely.
And so grateful and grateful for all of it. We're unconventional.
I love it. Okay, so we got the answers back from Crystal. I'm going to ask you some questions. I have 10 questions here for you. Just answer what you think Crystal said, okay?
Oh, what Crystal said?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I have her answers ready to go. So we'll see how many points out of 10 you get. So the first question, what is Crystal's favorite altcoin?
I'm going to have to go with Sense.
You would be correct, sir.
And if that wasn't correct, I'd be very disappointed, in missing an opportunity.
She did not miss
self-promotional plug. That normally is not something I advocate, but in this instance, I think it's okay.
But she did not miss the opportunity. So Sense is a project that she is a part of. We'll discuss that a little bit more next week when we have her on. What is Crystal's favorite romantic movie?
Romantic movie.
So I'm going to help you out here. She gave 2 answers. One's kind of a joke, and then one's kind of a serious one.
Knowing Crystal, and this is not a film that most people would associate with being a romantic movie, but it is kind of at its core because it's the story of Neo and Trinity. No. But I'm going to go with The Matrix.
Ding, ding, ding. 100% correct. That is her first answer. The Matrix. You guys are meant to be. I feel a fourth renewal coming.
Maybe the other obviously one is it a Princess Bride?
Oh, see, that's what I would go with, but she went Casablanca.
Casablanca, yeah. By the way, Casablanca, that was the first romantic movie I ever played for her, because when I asked her about Casablanca, I took her to a restaurant in LA called Casablanca that has a bunch of memorabilia from the film. And when she told me she'd never seen the movie, I said, we need to remedy this immediately. And that's been something that we've done on Valentine's Day. So I should have known better. But A Princess Bride, Dread Pirate Roberts, also very good for crypto.
You're right, 100%.
Hits the mark.
It does hit the mark. Okay, question number 3. What coin would she purge if she had the ability to? Meaning purge, meaning eradicate from the cryptocurrency space.
Oof. Which coin would Crystal think is kind of a coin that its time has come and it's ready to go? Well, it's going to have to be a scam coin of some type. It's already gone, but I'd say BitConnect.
She actually said none. She wouldn't do that to any of them. She loves all of her tokens and coins.
Oh, by the way, that was what if you asked me the question, what would I purge? Actually, no. I would have said 90% of them.
That's okay. We're gonna get your answers later this week. I sent an email to out, so we're gonna get your answers back for when we ask Crystal the same questions. So question 4. What is Crystal's favorite non-crypto activity?
Favorite non-crypto activity. Favorite.
She went pretty standard, I would say, with this answer.
I'm going to go with traveling.
Correct. Yeah, she went traveling.
Okay.
You're doing very well, by the way. I've been married to my wife. I've been with my wife for a very long time. I'm not 100% sure if I'd be doing as well as you are right now.
Well, I mean, this is the benefit of annual marriages.
That's
like think about it from a company perspective. As an employee with your boss, you have an annual review.
We sure do.
The annual marriage is a forcing function that forces an annual review of the relationship.
I'm going to bring this upstairs to my wife after this.
Every relationship should have this.
I agree.
We treat our businesses with more care and process
absolutely.
and structure than we do our most important relationship with our partner or life partner.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of logic to what we do and why we do it.
I'm gonna have dinner after this, and I'm gonna bring this up to my wife. So I'll let you know how it goes. But I'm with you. I think that you're 100% correct there. Okay, question number 5: Bitcoin or Ethereum? Which one do you think she would go with?
Well, she was an ERC20 token, but she's migrated to EOS, so I'm going to go with Bitcoin.
Correct. Wow, on fire. Okay, number 6. What is her favorite karaoke song? I'd be impressed. I would be impressed if somebody sang this one karaoke.
We haven't done karaoke in a while, but we're both very into music,
Mm-hmm.
And we both DJ. She's DJ Yes, I'm DJ Please. And so I'm gonna the stuff that we've been playing the most lately and has resonated would be it's an artist by the name of Nako Bear, and the song is Aloha Kiakoa.
She did not say that. She went with a little bit more boilerplate. She went with Bohemian
Despacito?
Rhapsody. Yeah. No.
Bohemian Rhapsody, okay.
That's a good one.
So, yeah, shout out to Puerto Rico.
Yeah.
No, she went with Bohemian Rhapsody. Bohemian Rhapsody.
By the way, I just watched the movie on the last
How was
flight
it? I haven't seen it yet.
from Tokyo. I thought it was great. I mean, the story of Queen is, incredible talent. Music that at the time was so different than anything else.
Exactly.
And timely. I should have gone with Bohemian Rhapsody.
Yep.
And now that I heard it, that should have been my first guess. And especially just having seen the movie, it's in my head.
I think
so. I had it going for me, but I dropped the ball.
All right. Question 7: What is the thing that Brock does that drives her crazy?
What do I do that drives her crazy?
Yeah, what do you do that drives her crazy?
Travel too much.
She said you were perfect, and you do nothing to upset her.
Oh.
I don't believe that.
No.
But, that was very kind.
That is very kind. That is very kind. Question number...
And what I said is the truth.
That's great. Yeah.
It's called I travel too much,
Yes.
meaning I'm not present.
No, that's
and for that, I'm sorry, Crystal, that I spread myself so thin.
Well, the love seems to be there, so I think she'll forgive you. Number 8, would she choose a Trezor or a Ledger for her cryptocurrency?
Well, I think we use both equally. We have a bunch of Trezors, a bunch of Ledgers, but I'm going to go with Ledger.
That's exactly what you went with. Okay.
Nice.
Number 9.
It's almost a coin flip, but Ledger. Well, they've raised a lot of money
Both good
lately,
products.
so yeah, they're both great products. And so yeah, it is a coin flip, but Ledger just tends to be a little bit more popular these days because they've raised a lot of money and all those sorts of things. They've got more happening. They're showing up at more events. They've got more marketing. They're getting more mind share.
Right.
That is one of the benefits when you catch it, when you got a tiger by the tail, you run.
Absolutely.
You don't walk.
Yep. Okay, number 9. What is her favorite love song? I'm going to give you a hint. it's been said already.
What did I just say? I said
hailing from Puerto Rico.
Despacito, and I said
ding,
one
ding,
other.
ding. That's the one.
Well, thank you for the Puerto Rican plug, Crystal. What was the other song I said? I can't even remember.
I think that was the only one I remember.
Aloha,
sorry, yes,
but that wouldn't have been a love song. Despacito, specifically the Justin Bieber version.
So I have a funny story about this.
Heck yeah.
I have a 5-year-old daughter, and I would say about a year ago she was doing her first year of school, and she came home, and I'm a music snob, we'll say. So, and when I say snob, means I just don't listen to the fun stuff that everybody else is listening to. I'm like depressed in my bedroom just listening. You know what I mean? So, but she comes in and she loves music, and she's going crazy, and she's singing the song, and I'm trying to figure out the words, and I'm like, "Are you saying Despacito?" And so I start Googling it on my phone, and I'm like, "Oh, okay, it's a song," and I start playing for her, and so it was her favorite. We would listen to that song, I don't know, 12, 13 times a day.
It's a great jam.
It's a great jam. And I went in, I started talking to, another cool kid, adult, but somebody that knew what they were talking about. I'm like, oh yeah, my daughter just started listening to this new Justin Bieber song. They're like, yeah, that song's been out for like 2 years.
Well, so you want to know something interesting about that song? Specifically, go to YouTube and check out the video. It's filmed in La Perla, or the Pearl of Puerto Rico, in Old San Juan.
I know.
But it is the most viewed video ever.
I know it's the most viewed video I've ever seen.
No, it's the most viewed video ever.
Really?
Wow. And so the most viewed video on the planet is a video in Puerto Rico.
That's fantastic.
That's
and it
great.
looks great. I mean, if it's anything like that video, we're making a strong case for Puerto Rico today. Okay, last question. By the way,
question.
You're doing great. You have 6 out of the 9 answers so far. Going for 70%. Number 10, what is Crystal's favorite romantic dinner meal?
Are we talking genre of food? Because my first response would be truffles. But I don't know if that would be... I don't know if I'd choose Italian if it's a genre.
I would say a genre, and then she gave me 2 answers. So I'd say more of a boilerplate and one more, maybe a little bit more elaborate.
Well, I mean, historically truffles, because for our first honeymoon, we went white truffle hunting in Elba. And so it's just kind of like, what I associate with on the romantic meal side of things. So I'm gonna go with favorite romantic dinner meal. Anything we make at home.
Unfortunately, no. She went with... it sounds very romantic. I'm not trying to take away from the romance of a home-cooked meal. But the answer she gave was sushi or long-coursed meal like marmalade in Puerto Rico.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. All right. That's right.
Well, I mean, there's so many good answers to that one.
So, again, she's trying to tie in the Puerto Rico aspect of this. She was...
Well, marmalade, when you make it down to Puerto Rico, you definitely need to check out. It is...
is it a restaurant?
Molecular, gastronomic. It's like 3 Michelin star type of restaurant. And so...
Oh, wow.
Not only is Puerto Rico amazing for all the reasons we've said, but the food in Puerto Rico is also very good. It's awesome.
I'm telling you. Sold. I'm 100%
a lot of people say Marmalade is the best restaurant in all the Caribbean.
Is that right?
Oh, wow.
All right. So that does it.
Subjective, of course.
Absolutely. So that does it for our questions. You have by far did fantastic. I think 6 out of 10 is a great number. So that pretty much does it for our end. We'll give you some time if you want to talk about any upcoming projects you're working on.
The only thing I want to add here is, if this message resonates with people, it's a call to action. Get out there in the world and make a difference. And it doesn't need to be Puerto Rico. That just happens to be one of the places where a lot of us are concentrating to, try and uplift others. Another thing is for anyone that's into anyone that used Mt. Gox, any Mt. Gox creditors. Come check out goxrising.com. I've been very involved. Mt. Gox was the Magic the Gathering online exchange started by Jed McCaleb in 2007 before Bitcoin. It pivoted into a Bitcoin exchange in 2010. It became the main Bitcoin exchange in the world from 2010, 11, 12, 13. Gox was rising and rising and rising. And in 2014, GOX had its colossal fall. It is to the crypto industry. It is our Lehman Brothers. It is our Bear Stearns. The rise, the fall. Most people had became first aware of Bitcoin in connection with the press related with Mt. Gox or maybe Silk Road.
Yep.
But it was our Enron. This was one of the biggest stories in the world. Mm-hmm. And so the first impression people had of Bitcoin was it's not safe. Your stuff gets stolen, it fails, people run off with the money, hacking. Most people's first impression has historically been negative because of stories like Mt. Gox. I almost bought Mt. Gox in late 2012, early 2013. I was bringing Mt. Gox into China in later 2013, and the day that Mt. Gox failed, I was giving a talk at Jason Kelcanis' event Launch after he founded TechCrunch Disrupt. He did Launch because he and Michael Arrington had a falling out. And I was giving the first Bitcoin talk in 2014 at Launch. The day that Gox failed, I come off the stage in San Francisco, and my phone's blowing up. Gox, 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 Gox. I'm like, oh, wow. Oof. I give Mark Karpelis a call. I said, hey, Mark, I'd like to buy Mt. Gox. He's like, are you not following the news? I said, I am. That's why I'm calling. He goes, and you're still interested? I said, I am, but the terms have changed.
Yeah, no kidding.
and so I cut a deal to buy Mark's 88% of the company for 1%. I mean, for one Bitcoin, originally $1. And then I did the same deal with Jed McCaleb. And because I was, obviously it was worth far less than zero. It was going to be, but I care about the industry. And I do a lot of the thankless jobs to try and, help our industry. So I was going to try and clean up that mess. Went and settled both class action lawsuits in the U.S. Went and filed the civil rehabilitation courts. The bankruptcy liquidation happens. I was saying rehabilitate, don't liquidate, rehabilitate, and all this stuff back in 2014. Obviously, the bankruptcy process is very slow. It takes a long time. And so kind of moved that into the back burner as I went off to go do Tether and EOS and BCAP and STOs and Noble and all the things, Auction Capital, but it's been in the back burner all this time. Fast forward to the price of Bitcoin rocketing up. All the creditors of Mt. Gox were only entitled to Bitcoin at a $425 price.
Right.
When Bitcoin went up to 10,000, all of a sudden Mt. Gox had billions and billions of dollars of excess capital that arguably belongs to the shareholders, of which I arguably own all of it. So fast forward to today. There's $630 million US dollars in the Mt. Gox estate and another 150,000 Bitcoin, roughly.
Ooh.
There's about a $700 million surplus there that I could make an argument as mine. I don't want 1 cent. I don't want a penny. I want all of that cash and all of that Bitcoin to go to the creditors, to the 24,000 victims of Mt. Gox that have filed claims with the bankruptcy trustee. I want all of that to go. I want to create, that's the Mt. Gox story is not over. It's been running for nearly 10 years. And we are now entering the last chapter. And we as an industry have the power to write the end of this story. How do we want our Lehman Brothers story to end? Do we want it to end like the financial world of 2008 and 9, where no one went to jail and everybody that worked in these organizations made off like bandits and, the people in the state and the taxpayers all got screwed? Or are we different as an industry, as a community of people building open source systems with open hearts and open minds? I want to see our victims taken care of as well as possibly can, getting everything.
That's terrific.
I want to see us go and try and recover the remaining 650,000 Bitcoins that are lost, amongst other things. Obviously, that'll be very hard if any of it can be achieved. But in an ideal world, the stretch goal is to get creditors 100% of everything back. And I would also like to see Mt. Gox live again. Mt. Gox had its rise, it's had its fall. It's been in bankruptcy for 5 years, and I'd like to see it rise like a phoenix from the ashes. That's how I'd like to see this story end. That's how I'd like to see this Joseph Campbell hero's story end. Because this is an opportunity not just for the victims, but for our entire industry. This has been the shadow, this has been the dark cloud that has hovered over us as an industry all this time. And the idea would be to give creditors, all the Mt. Gox users, equity in that new exchange, and all of the things to make sure that they get everything back. If, like Bitfinex, so I tried to do this already 5 years ago. Mm-hmm. If I had been able to launch the Mt. Gox exchange 5 years ago, just the fees off of the exchange these last 2 years may have made creditors whole. It worked with Bitfinex. 5 years has passed. Let's not let another 5 years pass. Let's be able to tell the stories that the creditors of Mt. Gox were made whole.
Yeah.
And the Phoenix rises again.
What a story that would be.
Right.
I think it's up to us.
Absolutely.
We, as a community, have the power to do it. And most importantly, that exchange would need to be different than the old exchange and all the exchanges, because what's happened to Mt. Gox continues to happen. The stories of Bitfinex. I mean, just this year, Cryptopia, now in Canada.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Quadriga CX.
Quadriga just happened. I mean, this is a story that continues to be playing on repeat. Mm-hmm. It is time that we use non-custodial exchanges. The new Mt. Gox would have to basically become a beacon of light, a demonstration of how this should be done, so that this problem stops once and for all. The technology is there. The ability is there. We can build non-custodial exchanges that mitigate and eliminate this risk, or at a minimum, use multi-sig in the various things that have been built now for some time. The problem is all the exchanges don't need to use it. It's like, it's on the list of things to do, but they care more about getting more market share.
Yeah.
They care more about making more money versus, preventing this problem that continues to repeat itself, because they all say it's not going to happen to me. And then it happens to them.
Right.
And they're like, well, it's not going to happen to me, but then it happens to them.
Right.
So clearly anything we would do with this new Mt. Gox as an industry, as a community, would have to be best of breed and demonstrate, inspire by leading by example, what all the exchanges in the world need to start doing. So that's my last plug.
That's
Gox Rising. I'm looking at the website now.
I'm Gox Rising. We've got a major announcement coming out tomorrow. We have on this Thursday a WebEx Thursday afternoon Pacific, Friday morning Japan time, and then we're doing an Ask Me Anything on Reddit Friday afternoon Pacific time, Saturday morning Japan time. For anyone that is curious or wants to get involved.
We'll make sure to put those links in the show notes too, by the way, so people can get to it. So that's very impressive.
Well, thank you for having me.
No, thank you for coming on.
Thank you so much for your time.
We really appreciate it. A bunch of wishes he was here, but unfortunately, technology isn't where it needs to be in rural New York State, apparently.
New York.
Well, you got at the beginning of the show a commitment already to do the next one live together in
Absolutely.
Puerto Rico. So yeah. We're already teed up for
I love it.
round 2.
We're going to take you up on that.
Yeah.
Yes, please.
So, anyhow.
And wait, that has to include magic tricks next time.
Oh, yeah, no, I'm not coming if I don't see magic tricks.
I will have my bag of tricks.
Perfect. So, that about does it for us. Again, we want to thank you so much for your time. We'll, again, make sure to put all those links in the show notes. This episode, I believe, is going to come out tomorrow. February 6th. So we'll post. We'll make sure to tag you in those and get the word out that you did one of my favorite shows. I think we've done about 60 or 70 of these shows. This is definitely one of my favorite ones. I'm a big fan of Puerto Rico now, so I'm going to figure out how to explain to my wife how we're going to have yearly marriage renewals, and we're going to move the family to Puerto Rico. But thanks again for your time. For myself, Chamber, and Cynthia, this is REKT Podcast. Don't get wrecked, and that is financial advice.